Thank you. It's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. I can confirm that the live stream is now live. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Street Trading Subcommittee. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. Sorry to interrupt. Could I ask whoever is listening to the live stream to put it on silent, please, because it's causing interruption for the meeting? Thank you. So when members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, the meeting will be adjourned. So that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, the chairman will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, the chairman will adjourn for a short period to try to re-establish their connection. As members are called to speak, the chairman will remind you to switch on your microphone. If for some reason you cannot be heard, I'll let you know. Votes today will be taken by roll call and I will announce the decision. Members must be present for the duration of the discussion on the application in order to be able to vote. We have public representation and other officers and authorities at the meeting today, and they are joining by telephone. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the committee who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using the raise your hand function. Before we start today's business, I will ask committee members to confirm they are present and state their electoral division. Members, I will now call your name. Please confirm your name and electoral division. Councillor Lennox Boyd.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheila Lennox Boyd, Cornwall Councillor for Saltash North.
Thank you. Councillor Luke.
Councillor Matthew Luke, I'm County Councillor for the Penwithwick and Bescopper ward.
Thank you. And Councillor Martin.
Good afternoon. I'm John Martin. I'm Division Cornwall Councillor for Helston South.
Thank you. I can also confirm that the following officers are present. If you could introduce yourselves, please. Claire James.
Good afternoon. Claire James, Licensing Officer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark Andrews.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Andrews. I'm the solicitor advising the committee today. Thank you.
Thank you. So now if we turn to today's proceedings and the agenda, item 1 on the agenda, election for chairman to the meeting. Can I call for nominations for chair, please?
Could I propose Councillor Luke?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. And can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lennox Boyd. So a quick roll call. Councillor Lennox Boyd.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Luke.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Thank you. That's all approved. So over to you, Chairman. Councillor Luke, starting with number 2. Apologies for absence. Thank you.
Before we proceed, all I can see at the moment is Councillor Boyd's chin and nobody else at the moment. So there we are. That's better.
It's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. I can confirm that everybody that we are expecting is on the call. Thank you.
That's right. The checker screen as it were has come up now. So it's just before I couldn't see anything. If anyone had put their hand up, I wouldn't have known what was going on. So I'm okay now. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Matt Luke here. as for today, I don't think there's any absentees or anything that I'm aware of.
No, that's correct. I've had no apologies. Thank
No
you.
apologies for absent. Okay. Well, asking everyone that's here to just introduce themselves very briefly. I'm Councillor Matt Luke from Penrith Episcopal Division. I'll hand over to my other members for now.
Sorry, Councillor Luke, it's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. Can I just draw your attention? Should we just do item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest, please?
Oh, blast. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yes, are there any declarations of interest today from other members or anybody else, please?
None, Chair. Thank you.
No, Chair, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Shall we go to item 4, which if you'd like to turn to your procedure part of the agenda. We've introduced the officers and we've introduced the members. So I think now you need to start at number 3, please.
Yep, I think we're ready to.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt again. There's some other people waiting in the lobby. So because this is a public meeting, then I'm admitting them and I will say the welcome introductions.
Okay. You just tell me when you're ready to continue.
Hello, my name's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. Welcome to the caller who has just joined us. Telephone number ending 374. Could you just confirm who you are, please?
Yes, it's Andrew Harry. I've just previously finished as the COVID ambassador for Penzance. I am listening in on the Teams meeting as well.
Yeah, you've actually joined our Teams meeting, so you'll be able to hear this.
Will I be able to speak through that route as well?
I need to. It's Helen Snell again. I need to clarify with our licensing officer if you are able to speak, because I'm not sure of your status in the meeting. Claire, could you confirm, please?
Sorry, say that again?
Could you introduce yourself again, please?
Yes, it's Andrew Harry.
Who are you representing as far as a consultee?
The consultee, I'm not really. I'm as a member of the public, really.
Okay, you wouldn't actually be able to speak in this meeting or partake in this meeting. You should go via a live link. I don't know if this telephone number has been shared with you by somebody else, but you're actually in the live meeting at the moment.
Hello, can I introduce myself quickly? I'm Mr. Portway. I was under the impression I could bring a +1 in, so I did let Andrew know of the details. And obviously he's chosen to join, if that's okay.
Okay, so he's supporting you as the applicant.
Yes.
Okay, is that okay, Mark?
Hello, Chairman, it's Mark from Legal. Yeah, so the gentleman that's joined us is just a witness on behalf of Mr. Portaway, is that correct? Effectively.
Oh, yes, if that's the avenue that we're in, yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I just need to clarify that for, we need to be fair to everyone. So, but that's fine. Sorry, I'm Mark Andrews, I'm the legal advisor to the committee. As far as I'm concerned, that's acceptable. Yeah, you're just supporting the applicant, so that's not a problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, it's John Touche from Cornwall Trading Standards. I'm attending as well.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just going to ask the officers to introduce themselves, or just check they're all here. So just a minute. So that we know Simon, the owner, is here. Mr. Andrew Harry, we've figured out who he is now. So Brian from Environmental Health, are you here?
Yes, good afternoon, Councillor. I'm Brian Ashler. I'm one of the commercial food and safety officers from Cornwall Council.
That's okay. Thank you very much. That's Nicola from licensing.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yes, I'm Nicola Keane. I'm the Licensing Compliance Officer for the west of the county.
Okay, lovely. You're here, and Graham as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair, fellow councillors and colleagues, and Mr. Portway. Yes, Graham Bailey, Senior Licence Compliance Officer, and I'm here in support of my colleagues, in particular Nicola Kuhn, part of my team.
Excellent, thank you, Graham. Lovely. Okay, then we now we all know who we are, and so forth we'll proceed straight on to Claire, the licensing officer, to set out today's hearing. Then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the application for us today is for the renewal of a street trading consent. The area applied for at Marketplace Penzance has been designated as a street trading consent area under the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982. Therefore, it was necessary for Mr. Simeon Portway to submit a street trading application. Mr. Portway's application is to sell coffee, cakes, pastries, soup, lemonade, etc. from a classic Citroen HY van. The proposed days and hours of trading in 2021 are Mondays to Fridays, 8 AM until 6 PM each day, and that's from January through to December. The views of consultees can be found on pages 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 of your reports. Arising from the consultee responses from Penzance Town Council, environmental health, licensing compliance, trading standards, Penzance bid, and also the Penzance antisocial behaviour caseworker, it was felt appropriate that the application should be determined by the Street Trading Subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay.
Chairman, it's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. Can I just ask on your behalf to the applicant that the applicant was aware that they could be represented? Are you aware of that, Mr. Portway?
Represented in what way, sorry? Other than representing myself, or?
Yes, or legal representation if need be.
I wasn't aware of the need, but thank you for making me aware.
Yeah. Okay. Are we happy to proceed then, Helen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, fine. Okay, members, was there any questions for Claire on the representation so far?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. Okay, we'll go straight on to the applicant, Mr. Portway, to present your case, as it were, or for your reapplication, please.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate the committee members for your time and consideration on this matter. I will try to keep this as brief as possible and to the point.
Thank you.
So to the tube coffee van. We've been trading and serving the community of Penzance for over 5 years now. As a business, I believe the Tube has generated an excellent reputation and is now known across the region for not only quality organic coffee offering, but for the quirky and unusual presence it brings to the Penzance High Street, a proven tourist attraction to which I can testify. I want to emphasise that there is an enormous amount of goodwill and local support for the business, as others will testify to if needs be. There is also a significant number of people locally who depend on the van for social reasons. Being outside, the van sits in what can be called a neutral shared space. This element of the business helps foster interactions between people of different backgrounds and interests. This, in turn, stimulates relationships, which is absolutely vital for some, particularly now when mental health is being so negatively impacted by isolation. This type of thing is vital for the well-being of our community, the importance of which I cannot be overstated. As for COVID-19 guidelines and the business, having received guidance from members of the council with regard to government guidelines, the Tube has implemented all of the COVID-19 recommendations suggested. These include the closing of the large side hatch to help avoid bottlenecking and discourage gathering, signage reminding customers to follow government guidelines, tape on the floor demarcating queuing arrangements, although often difficult because of rain, the removal of seating, hand sanitizer on the counter, and a plastic screen between the customer and the staff. As for complaints regarding customer gatherings, I understand there's been a few complaints with regard to members of the public standing around the area of the van. I appreciate the concerns of the complainants, but it also has to be appreciated by the committee that although we encourage people not to gather around the van, it is not within our power to enforce these measures. I think at this point it's realistic to assume people are aware of the guidelines concerning physical distancing. Freedom of movement is a fundamental human right as defined in Article 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Although we adhere to and highlight these guidelines, we do not have the power to control or direct our fellow members of the public and infringe on their rights in this way. The responsibility of movement is down to the individual, or it's down to the police if harm has clearly been demonstrated and proven. As far as I'm aware, it's not incumbent on members of the public to enforce any government guidelines on any other members of the public. The Tube has done everything it can to accommodate the COVID regulations where possible, but it cannot be expected to act in contravention of human rights and should not be penalised for upholding this position. In conclusion, the Tube is a much loved and needed part of Penzance life for a lot of people. It's a locally owned small business that pays its taxes and now employs 2 people who depend on the modest income it provides. Please, I ask you to reflect on the real impact of denying the licence renewal is going to have not only on my family, our finances and well-being, but on those in the town who use the service regularly. For some, it literally functions as therapy and no extra cost to the council, I might add. Removing it will have a negative impact on the lives of many in the local area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Portway. Members, was there any questions you wish to ask? Sheila?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Portway, and thank you for that brief. What I'd like to ask is, in your application for your renewal, you mentioned products to be sold is coffee, cakes, pastry, soups, lemonade, etc. But in one of the sections, it says that you weren't going to be selling food. You were just going to be selling teas and coffee, reducing the food hygiene risk to a minimum. Was that
That's correct?
The replacement of the pump for your hot water? Or are you still going to, is it updated so you will be trading, selling food as well?
We intend in the future, when things return back to normal, to restart the food operation part of the business. But as it stands now, we've just reduced everything to simplify and to try and bring into line as much as possible as we can, just to the coffees and teas and hot beverages.
Lovely.
In the takeaway manner.
That explains it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, John, did you want to?
I was just going to ask the same question, so
okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so we've got no more questions. Okay.
Mark Andrews.
I was going to say, has Mark got any questions?
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification. So it's Mark Andrews from Legal Services here. Just in terms of the issues raised by the by environmental health and the other parties who have made representations against against the application. I don't know if Mr. Portaway could respond to some of those points. In particular, a point that he just said a moment ago. He said he's not responsible. Well, he suggested he's not responsible for his customers during the COVID outbreak because of the Human Rights Act, which I would suggest is completely incorrect. But Mr. Portaway, have you undertaken a COVID-safe risk assessment for your business, please?
Yes, there was an inspection within the last month or so, I believe.
Now, have you undertaken a risk assessment for your business?
Did they not conduct the risk assessment during the inspection? Wasn't that I thought that was the risk assessment. Apologies.
Okay, they might be able to clarify that when they speak. And can you answer who the people are that were working on your behalf when the officers attended?
Yes, for sure. My son now works in the van as employed to work in the van, and his partner works in the van as well. And I believe it was the latter who was in there when the inspections were conducted.
Okay, and have you asked them why they didn't provide their details?
Oh, simply because of feeling somewhat aggressed by the nature of the inspection. I think there was just a lot of intimidation, and she was scared.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Well, you asked the questions I was going to ask, Mark, so that was okay. And I'm a little bit intrigued by the fact that they were scared as to or intimidated by being approached by members of the council. If that's the job they're in, they should expect that kind of thing to be happening. So I find that a little bit confusing to myself, but there we are. Okay, Mr. Portway.
Yeah, she's not.
Would you like, you know, if you're running a business and an employee from the local council comes and asks you questions, then surely you should be very upfront and willing to give all details possible.
I think she did provide as much as she felt was necessary at the time, but she's quite young and naive, and I guess easily intimidated or whatever. I think she managed to give everything that was needed, but yeah, she was, I don't know, I wasn't there, so I don't know how the transaction went down, but she was shook up by the whole experience, wasn't really expecting it and things like that. So I think she had a bit of difficulty dealing with the whole affair. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Intimidated, really. I think it was just a kind of a way of because she wasn't her business, she didn't want to be responsible herself in that sense, I guess, and moved it past the responsibility onto me, and I am the one who is responsible. So.
Well, yes and no. If she's running the business from that place, then she's being held responsible. But there we are.
Happy to add, Simeon, if you like.
Yeah, please do.
Hello, it's Andrew Harry here.
Yes, sorry.
In my role as recently as the COVID ambassador in Penzance, I found the staff in the van to be really very responsive to suggestions and proposals and very communicative. So I can only suggest that there is some merit in Mr. Portway's comments.
Okay. Mark, you had your hand up again. Was there another question you wish to ask?
Yeah, just to clarify, the gentleman that just spoke, you said you're the COVID ambassador. Could you just explain a little bit for the benefit of members what that role involves, please?
Yes, over the last month, in a number of towns in Cornwall, members of the Cornwall Council officers were redeployed to fulfil a role in various towns to look at how people had responded, the traders had responded, and the members of the public were responding to the government guidance, and to provide guidance and support to businesses and public alike, and to help the Cornwall Council team enforce issues as and when that was needed, but also for dealing with issues on the ground that were bubbling up. And I'll give you an example of that. That would have been the issues in Mousehole, where people were very, very concerned with second homes and things like that.
Okay.
And sorry, if I may, Chairman, just follow that with a supplementary question. And presumably you attended these premises, and what was your, obviously your role is to do with COVID. So what was your experience of these premises when you went to them? Did they need guidance? Were they compliant? You know, just a sort of general overview, which is presumably why you're here anyway. But
well, yeah, I mean, I could, the guidance reminding the members of the public and presumably the customers to maintain their social distancing was clear and obvious. They did respond to advice from me in ensuring that there was a kickboard in front of the van, such that the customers maintained their distance when they were paying for their goods, etc. But don't forget, this van is outdoors. And I did send a report in to Nick Kelly that said that actually they were complying exactly the same way that the van down at the railway station was. And so actually I didn't have any concerns in that regard. I can't speak for the food standard side of things, but as far as the guidelines and the government were concerned with their response to COVID, it's outside. They were following the guidelines they needed. And I've seen that recently they've upped that and been very responsive to the visit by the food standards team in putting in extra measures as well. So I don't really have a lot more to say.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Members, are there any questions you would like to ask Andrew at all, please?
No, thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
Okay then, right. Simon, Mr. Portway, is there anything else you wish to add at this point before we move on?
No, I believe that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, you'll have a chance to speak later on anyway. So, okay, we'll now move on to. We've got no members of the public speaking that I'm aware of. Is that correct, Claire?
Sorry, can you say that again?
There's no members of the public to speak or anything. Just members from the council.
Just those that made representations to the application, as per the report. It's only those that should be present in the meeting to speak, other than the applicant and the gentleman that's just spoken, Andrew Harry, that's representing him as well.
Okay, we'll move on then. As representation from various members of the council, we'll just start from where I've listed you, from Brian from Environmental Health. If you'd like to put your case forward, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 21st of December 2020, I was asked to visit the Tube to check on concerns regarding social distancing and food hygiene matters. I spoke to a lady who identified herself as Lou. She was a little reticent in giving me her surname, but once I'd established that Mr. Portway was still the food business operator, she'd telephoned him. I was happy to accept and could see that she was slightly nervous at my attending. Had a look over the van, checked that everything was in order, verified that there was no food as such being sold, just tea and coffee. So that had lowered the risk to food hygiene that had previously been discovered by a colleague. I did notice that the hot water pump was still inoperable, but she did say to me that was due to be replaced imminently. And because of the lowered risk of tea and coffee only, she had plenty of liquid sanitizer and sanitizing wipes there. So I was content with the hygiene element there. I did mention to her about social distancing and asked her to do all within her power to ensure that customers observe the distancing. I did notice that the rear of the vehicle was open to as a serving hatch. I did notice that there was a perspex screen suspended from the roof of the vehicle to protect both her and customers. And I did notice that there was, as Mr. Harry observed, a step in front of the or immediately behind the vehicle to prevent people getting too close and to maintain the distance. One thing I did pick up on as regards food safety, she was selling coffee with dairy milk and soya milk, soya being one of the regulated allergens, and she had a system in place, albeit verbal, to identify which was which, 2 separate jugs, so that cross-contamination didn't occur. I was moderately satisfied with the procedures that she had in place following my visit.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Members, are there any questions we wish to ask Brian at this moment in time?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, everyone else is happy then. We'll next move on to Nicola from Licensing Enforcement, if we can, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I attended the Tube Coffee Van on Thursday, the 17th of December, with my colleague John Touche from Trading Standards, as he's part of the COVID enforcement team and had received complaints about social distancing. And so we both went along and spoke to the female who was working the van on that particular day. We introduced ourselves as members of the council and our purpose for the visit, and just asked if she could confirm who she was, but she was unwilling to give any details at all to us. And that she said her boss was Mr. Portway. We inquired where he was at that time, and she informed us that he'd moved to France and that herself and her partner were now running the business. We tried to engage in conversation with her. She was very nervous, but you know, we were there to do a job, and we just wanted to engage with her, really. And she said that she was to take advice and that we needed to speak to Mr. Portway, and that's the only person she was going to take advice with, even though she was actually running the business for him. At the time of the visit, there was no plastic covering up or screen between customers and herself. She said she was exempt from wearing any face covering. We gave her some advice about putting up some sort of plastic between her, which I now believe that has been done. I did notice there was a kickboard in front of the van to try and prevent people from getting too close to her, and however, it was observed whilst we were there doing the visit that a gentleman came up and sort of went round the side of that kickboard to give her some money. There was also a chair present during the time of our visit, which she stated was from one of the customers. We were just trying to really give her some social distancing advice, and that it wasn't really suitable to have a chair there because that encouraged people to stay, and they were an actual takeaway business. She did have sanitizer there at the time for people to sanitize their hands, and also, as we stated, the hot water wasn't working, but she was using sanitizer as well at the time. I think that's all really from my side, that I was asked to go there really for social distancing measures. Thank you.
Okay. Members, is there anything we wish to ask Nicola at this point in time?
No,
thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to Graham if Graham wants to add anything to it. at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got the benefit of not actually being physically present at any of these visits. So I've been listening very intently to the comments made by both Mr. Portway and his representative and my fellow colleagues. And I would just like to add a couple of things, having read through the information pack prior to this meeting, which was distributed by Claire. A few points, really. The first one is that I acknowledge Mr. Portway's references to the Human Rights Act, but with the strange times that we've been living in since March, I think you have to weigh up several things, and the introduction of the COVID enforcement regulations and the guidance which goes with it. I'm not saying it takes priority over everything, but I think it needs to be taken on board very seriously and not dismissed lightly by the reference to the Human Rights Act. We've all had to change. We've all had to adopt a very, very flexible approach, and that would include staff banning coffee shops and that sort of thing. So the issue that I've heard my colleagues Brian and Nicola to date give me a few little bits of concern with regards to the issues with the European Union Service Directive in regards to public safety, public health and protection of consumers. And perhaps that was a little bit lapse on behalf of the Tube. The first point I wanted to make, I would contest the comment that Mr. Portway's representative mentioned with regards to the conduct of my fellow colleagues. Now, I've already said I wasn't there, so I couldn't witness it firsthand, but I've worked for the council for 23 years, and I've known both of the officers that have spoken so far for as long as that, and I think I hold their professional opinion and their conduct in very high esteem. They are both very good officers, and I don't think I've ever seen them or heard them raise their voice in anger or in any other form of sort of emotion which would deter a member of the public from cooperating. So I would like to challenge Mr. Portway's representative on that. The issues that
certainly if you want to deal with that now.
Can I finish first, please?
Yes, let's say if we can, if Graham can finish before we have anybody else make comment, please.
Yeah, I've almost finished, Chair. There was a couple of other little bits and pieces. There's been reference that Mr. Portway has relocated to France. Now, I don't know if that is a temporary arrangement or that's a permanent thing. But having looked at the conditions for street trading, the first condition says quite clearly that this consent shall not be assigned, transferred or sublet to any other person's firm or organisation. And the last part at the end of the conditions say that, important note, the above conditions must be strictly complied with. So at some stage, I wonder if Mr. Portway would be able to confirm whether he was actually aware of that condition. That's really all I have to say, unless unless I can help Chair or anybody else with any other comments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brian. Graham, sorry. If I just can ask members if they've got any questions of Graham a moment before we go back to Mr. Portway.
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
No questions. Mark, did you have any questions before we move on?
No, thank you, Chair. Although I think there's another representative, Mr. Touche from the council. I think he's also. Yeah, sorry. Yes. No, I have no questions. No,
I'm going to get to Mr. Touche in a moment. I'll just bring in Mr. Touche a moment, Mr. Portway, before we come back to you to give your response, if that's okay, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair. basically, I'm a trading standards officer, and I've worked for the service for 32 years now, and I've dealt with a lot of people in my life and in my career. So one of the things that I do prevalently try to do is communicate with traders in an open and transparent manner. When I visited the Tube coffee shop on the 17th of December with my colleague Nicola from licensing, I introduced myself as well as Nicola did, and one of the things that we want to get across is that there was non-compliance relating to COVID legislation, which is very paramount in this time at the moment, and the importance of social distancing and making sure that the actual premises is COVID secure. The lady that I spoke to was unwilling to give her name, but tried to get the message across that we were trying to help and try our best to make sure that if there was any non-compliances, we could resolve it, make sure that the actual food business was safe for customers. There was no face covering, but she did admit that she's not able to wear face covering, and so she's exempt. There was no plastic screen up. There was a chair that I can confirm that Nicola's already highlighted. So that was a pinch point where social distancing could be a challenge, not just for customers buying coffee, but the actual person sitting on the chair, if there wouldn't be a 2-metre gap. So that was an issue that was raised. My main big issue was in relationship to the food standard side of things, and you may not be aware is that the Food Information Regulations came in 6 years ago, and it relates to allergens, and allergens are a really important thing on food safety. And at the front of the counter there was some croissants and some cakes, as well as the coffee. And as a food operator, if somebody has an allergen, they should have be able to provide the potential customer of information about allergens, and that's really paramount in safety. And I don't know if you're aware that there's a case, and it's called Natasha's Law, that's coming in October this year. Basically, it's a young 15-year-old lady, a young girl who basically bought a sandwich, Pret-a-Manger sandwich, entered at Heathrow Airport, and then went on to get on the plane, and subsequently had an anaphylactic shock because of nuts in the actual sausage seeds which were in the sandwich. So it highlighted that allergens are really important for food operators to make sure that they have that information to hand. And when I did speak to the young lady about have you got an allergen management system, there was nothing in place, and plus there were some croissants which were uncovered, and I said, well, you know, that's another thing, that there's potential food contamination. And the comment I received was basically, well, if you do get food poisoning, well, you'll get over it, it's not an issue, which it raised a big concern with me that the actual food operator may not have been competent and could have dealt with, could have needed additional support and training to make sure that she was competent in a food business.
Okay, thank you, John. Before we continue on, there's a lot of background noise somewhere along the line. I don't know if somebody's not turned the live feed off or some, but there's a lot of background noise. So if everyone could check that they haven't got anything else interfering in the background, please. Right, members, are there any questions you wish to ask John from Trading Standards?
Hello, John. Yeah, can I speak, Chair?
Yeah, Sheila, yeah, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, John, regarding, I do see, and looking at the conditions for street trading consent, number 7, it says the consent holder must at all times comply in full with the relevant food hygiene legislation. So this would have been actually given to regarding the keeping of food, etc.
Yeah, I mean, basically, as a food business, you must make sure that the food is safe, and that's a key element as being a food operator. So, as the employees within the cafe, should I call it, that they are responsible to make sure that the actual food that they sell is safe, and that they provide customers with the appropriate information related to allergens.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, John, did you have any questions?
No, thank you, Mark.
Mark, was there anything from you?
Yes, please, Chairman. Just if I may,
Yes.
ask Mr. Touche just a couple of questions. So, you may have heard me say about the requirement for a COVID safe risk assessment to be undertaken. Are you aware of that regime?
In relationship to what? That the actual food business to actually make sure that they've carried out an assessment themselves to make sure that the actual yes. I mean, I didn't ask the question. I asked specifically when I did the inspection. I could clearly see that there was non-conformity in relationship to social distancing measures. And so, but I would have perceived that the actual food business would have actually carried out their own assessment on the premise to make sure that it was fit for COVID legislation requirements.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, or your colleagues may wish to correct me, but my understanding is that all businesses that are operating have to undertake a COVID safe risk assessment in order to operate.
Is that not restricted to those above with 5 employees or more?
My understanding, well, this is where I'm happy to be corrected. Sorry, is that Andrew, is it?
Yeah. As far as I can recall from the government guidelines, that risk assessment is required for all businesses if you employ more than 5 people. Okay. It's advisory for less than 5 people.
Right, so it's just an advisory. Okay, well that's fair enough. Thank you for that, Andrew.
Sorry, Chair, if I could just clarify that the legislation relating to COVID legislation, with all of the different types of tiering systems and lockdowns that we've had over the last 9 months, the legislation has constantly changed. So as a food operator or as a business, it has been very challenging into actually interpreting the law. Ignorance of the law is no defence, but there has been an awful lot of changes over this very short period of time.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of things in the legislation and guidance that don't tally either. So it's very I accept that it's very difficult for anyone operating a business to be fully compliant with the COVID requirements, and I would certainly make sure members are aware of that. It was just about whether there was a requirement, but I think Andrew has clarified that. I think I wouldn't disagree with what he's saying, so that's fine.
Mark, could I also just add to that, because I think something that's also relevant in the context is that this van, like the van down on the railway station, is operating out of doors and therefore not within an enclosed space. And a lot of the social distancing guidelines relate to enclosed spaces, especially to do with mask wearing, etc., when it's less than 1 metre. And so it is a different kettle of fish, if you like, than dealing with a, say, like Costa, where you walk into the shop.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chairman. Thanks for that, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay. Right, before we proceed then, members, is there any questions you wish to ask any of the representatives from the council at this point before we move on?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, all right. Right, well, we'll move on back to Mr. Portway then. If you want to sum up yourself on this, any questions that have been brought up or anything else that's arisen since then, you've now got your opportunity to answer those questions or so forth.
Thank you. There were quite a few little points that were raised. I don't know if I'm going to be able to cover them all, but I am currently living in France, but I have a house in Penzance still. I don't know if that makes any difference, and whether it's all permanent or not, I can't really answer that either, I'm afraid. But and as for the staff, they are, and the license situation, they are in an employed status. I didn't realise I had to provide them with a written testimonial saying as such, and they needed to display that in the van somewhere. I wasn't actually aware of that, so that's in hand. We'll make sure that happens if we start trading again, so that's clear that they're employees and not the official representatives. I was wondering what also I thought that Lou was quite responsive to the suggestions made by the councillors as to what should be done. As far as I'm aware, I'm not clear as to what she resisted for. That's in those cases, and also that there is hot water in the van from the coffee machine, so we do have hot water available and always have had for hygiene reasons. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and the cake thing. We on the day in question, it was I think the only cake we do that has anything in it is the honey and almond cake, which is clearly marked and called honey and almond cake, and that's what it says on the thing. So obviously that says almond, which is the allergenic in that ingredient in that cake. So that's obviously stated and was stated at the time. And I don't know what else. I wasn't really expecting another kind of conclusion opportunity, but I'm grateful for everyone's time. Thank you.
Okay, members, did you have any more questions for Mr. Portway? I've got one, but
No, I'm fine, thank you, Chair.
John?
I'm muted. Yes, Mr. Portway, do you believe that over the last couple of months there have been improvements made to help comply, and that you have advised your staff, your employees, of that and the need to be more vigilant?
100%. We've made every effort we can, and I think you'll find for most of there's a community officer who comes around. I think his feedback has demonstrated that as well, that we have responded as best we can to the various demands. The one thing we do obviously have trouble with is marshalling the area around the van. I mean, when we're working, you're inside the van, you can't actively, constantly marshal the area of people. Only sort of the ones that you're immediately interacting with, as it were. But they've taken everything on board, as far as I know, and the withdrawal of the food has helped with that situation. And yeah, I think they've done really well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Portway, have your staff had the appropriate food hygiene training and so forth?
Yeah, they both have level 2 food hygiene certification.
Okay, that's fine. That's not a problem. So, Mark, did you have any further questions before we move on?
No, I think I don't recall who it was, Chairman, but someone wanted to respond to Graham Bailey. When I don't know if that's still relevant or if whoever it was still wants to respond, but I remember they interjected and you said they could come back at the end, but that hasn't been covered.
Right,
so
yes.
I just want to give them that opportunity, whoever that was. Sorry.
Okay. Is there anybody else out there then that wishes to add anything before we move on? John, got your hand up? No? That sounds like a no then. Okay then. At this point, we will leave the live stream, move on and go and make our assessment of the license and bring the meeting to a pause, as it were, where we go on and make our thing of the committee. I'm breaking up now.
Well, I'm sorry, I can't make you all guys a nice cup of coffee in the meantime.
Good one, good one. Unfortunately, we're not influenced by bribery of any type. Unless it's got rum in it. Sorry. Okay, so Helen, if you would like to read out the notification before we move on.
Thank you, Councillor Luke. It's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. I'll read out the declaration which members will vote on to go into private session. Then members, the advising lawyer Mark Andrews and myself will leave the meeting. The live stream will be paused and then we will come back in to announce the decision. Of course, going back into public session, so all those on the line at the moment can listen to the outcome. So, in accordance with the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following business on the grounds that they would be likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information of the following description. Information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings, and that the proceedings, apart from the resolution, shall remain confidential. So could I have a proposer, please?
I'm happy to propose that, Councillor Lennox Boyd.
Thank you. And second. Thank you, Councillor Luke. So a roll call for to vote on that recommendation, please. Councillor Lennox Boyd.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Luke.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Martin.
4.
Thank you. So that's carried. So I will now ask for the live stream to be paused. So if we can just remain silent while that's happening.
Right. I'm just saying we're going to probably be about a quarter of an hour to everyone else that's out there. And we'll move over to the next, lead the committee then. Right.
Excuse me, Chair, can I ask where we're going to move? Are we going to move to the street in
back to the other screen?
Yes.
Members, could I just ask you to just remain silent for 1 minute until we've got confirmation that the live stream is paused, and then I can give you some further details.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone on this meeting, the meeting is now not being live streamed. So members, would you like to join your meeting that was in your diaries for 1:30, which is the street trading legal briefing? I'll pop over there and I'll call you in if there's any confusion. Thank you. Other people on this call, if you wish to remain here, we will be about 15 minutes or so, and then we will come back, go into public session and announce the result. Thank you. Hello, Helen Snell, Democratic Services. I can confirm the live stream is now back up and running. So we'll just take the vote to move back into public session, please. So can I have a proposer?
I should propose Councillor Matthew.
I can second that, John Martin.
Thank you. So a quick roll call vote to go back into public session. Councillor Lennox Boyd?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Luke?
For.
And Councillor Martin?
For.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We've made our decision, on the result, and I shall now hand over to our legal representative, Mark, who will give you the details of our decision.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just confirm that you can, can you just confirm that you can hear me, please, before
Yes,
I start?
I can.
Lovely, thank you. So the proposal's as follows. So it's proposed that arising from consideration of the report, the evidence, submissions from all parties, and having regard to the Cornwall Council street trading policy, the application for renewal of street trading consent from Mr. Simeon Portsway be granted subject to the following additional conditions. 1. Anyone working at the tube is to wear a face covering. If the person is unable to wear a mask, then they are required to wear a visor or similar in order to protect customers, but also to protect the individual working at the tube. If it's not possible for them to wear any face covering whatsoever, then evidence such as a letter from a doctor is required to be provided to the Council's Environmental Protection Service, confirming that this is the case. 2. A full allergen management system is to be put in place and operated by the applicant. This allergen management system is to be approved by the Council's Environmental Protection Service. 3. Signage shall be placed at the serving hatch at the tube, reminding customers of the importance of social distancing and the importance of an appropriate distance when ordering from the tube, and that they are required to disperse and not gather around the tube once they have purchased their products from them. 4. The applicant is reminded that they are required to comply with all the standard conditions of the street trading consent and these additional conditions attached by the subcommittee at today's hearing, and that failure to comply with these conditions may result in the applicant's street trading consent being reviewed, which could potentially result in revocation of the consent. If the applicant has any issues with operating the tube, then members would suggest that they contact the council officers who are there to support businesses, including the tube, in any way that they are able. Members heard from the applicant and another party who was a COVID ambassador in support of the application. Members also heard from a number of officers of the council. Members noted that Penzance Town Council, Environmental Health, Licensing Compliance, Trading Standards, Penzance Bid and Penzance Antisocial Behaviour Caseworker had made representations regarding the application. Members noted the nature of the representations, and in particular that specific concerns had been raised relating to health and safety, as well as the manner in which the premises had been operated. However, members did not consider there was sufficient evidence to show public safety would be undermined as a result of the granting of the application. Members felt the additional conditions should deal with the concerns raised. Members noted that any prohibition on street trading authorisations must be justified by an overriding reason relating to the public interest. Having regard to this, members felt the objections showed there were very real concerns relating to the manner in which the premises had been operated, and also the issues regarding safety, and in particular the impact on consumers. However, members also noted the measures put in place following the advice provided by the council officers to the applicant to prevent future issues at the premises, and members felt that this was positive. The subcommittee in making this decision also had regard to the street trading policy of the Cornwall Council. Subcommittee felt on this occasion, in respect of this specific application, taking all the information into account, including the representations received, that it was proportionate and reasonable to grant the application. That's the proposal, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Well, I shall propose this proposal.
I'm happy to second it, Councillor Lennox Boyd.
Okay, I will.
Thank you, members. We can just go to the vote on that one then. So we've got the proposal as read by our legal advisor and proposed by Councillor Luke, seconded by Councillor Lennox Boyd. So if you can vote now, please. Councillor Lennox Boyd?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Luke?
For.
And Councillor Martin?
For.
Thank you. That's carried. Back to you, Chairman, for our last item on the agenda.
Okay, well, as far as I'm aware, there's no other business to be considered of urgency or any other business that we need to deal with today. So I would just like to thank my fellow councillors and other members of the licensing team, and Mark also, and everybody else for their patience in today's long day, and everybody else a happy new year and hopefully a bright future forthcoming from this when we eventually come out of lockdown.
Thank you, subcommittee. I just want to say thank you very much. And will I get a copy of the list of your requirements in an email or
yeah, is that
yes.
Mr. Portway? Yes.
Yes. Brilliant. Thank you.
And say just a note to say, like, if your staff need any help from Cornwall Council at all in any way, shape or form, do not hesitate to ask. We are definitely here to help, not to hinder.
I much appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And at that point in time, I should say goodbye to everyone and close the meeting.
Thank you. It's Helen Snell, Democratic Services. That's 15:55. We're closing the meeting. If you could just all remain silent while I arrange for the live stream to be terminated, just in case anybody is